So it's great to speak today with Jonny Hamp, Head of Events at British Triathlon. Jonny, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Gary. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. Sun is sort of shining. Winter is here, but the season has not been so jolly in terms of the triathlon season. And obviously, we're here to discuss that. I think it'd be fascinating to hear about the work that you guys have been doing at British Triathlon. Maybe as a starter, can you sort of tell us a little bit about you and your background, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure, no problems. I've been involved in sport since '99. I was part of the company who bought London Triathlon in 2001 when it was about 800 people, and grew it to what it was in the late noughties, sort of 10,000 odd people taking part. We also launched Blenheim Triathlon, London Duathlon, and Run to the Beat as well. So I worked in that sphere for 10 years or so, then moved overseas for a period, then came back to the UK, and have been working at British Triathlon since September 2016.
All right, cool. So quite a few years. So you're head of events. So you were head of major events. You've got a bigger remit with a slightly shorter job title. So, head of events, obviously, very important role within British Triathlon. So 2020, clearly seriously challenging year, particularly for you as a governing body and for event organisers in Britain and across the world. Maybe you can kind of outline a bit how you adapted to the challenge, because obviously we were speaking early on in sort of February, March time, and I think it'd be great to sort of explore that a bit as to how things evolved.
Yeah, and I think we're very lucky. We've had very strong leadership in the organisation, both from our exec team and from our boards. And I think the key thing about the organisation is we've always had the attitude of remaining agile to any situation and any opportunity. Set out some clear principles, the key one being strong communication to provide leadership, throughout the sport, as well as protecting our people. And that's both our staff, but also all those people involved in the sport. And so having those sort of adjusted founding principles during this period has given us a really clear direction about where we're going and what we've been focused on doing.
Yeah. So pandemic hit, lockdown happened, everyone's in disarray. How did you, as you say, it was an impressive turnaround, as you say, thanks to the leadership and the team that you have. So you came up with some policies. There was obviously discussion with race organisers as to what could be done. Obviously at that initial point in time, nothing could be done because races weren't possible. But then we did see in the summer a number of races come to fruition thanks to COVID secure policies. So how did you come to get to those policies? Was it a dialogue with other governing bodies? Was it something that British Triathlon did under its own steam?
We did a series of things. Key was staying as close as possible to the government, both through DCMS and primarily through Sport England, which obviously drives a huge amount of the agenda in England, as well as our home nation bodies staying close to their devolved governments in Wales and Scotland as well. As directly as an organisation and from an events perspective, we very quickly pulled together a think tank, for want of a better word, of a number of the more experienced race organisers from around all of the home nations. We probably had about 12 to 14 representatives on there from England, Wales and Scotland. And ultimately we used it as a very, very candid forum where we talked about the situation that we all found ourselves in and how to get ourselves out of it. We had been developing, as COVID was hitting and before the lockdown came in, we saw the direction it was potentially going in and we saw how it was going to affect our sport. So essentially what we did is rather than trying to adapt and force fit into what needed to happen, we started with a blank sheet of paper and effectively redefined the event experience in a way that fitted, not force fitted, but in a way that met the government guidelines of social distancing and increased hygiene.
Yeah.
And so with our working group, we developed through a huge number of iterations some COVID requirements that then we communicated through a series of online forums with our broader event organizer network. And that essentially formed the basis of organisers having the confidence to go out there and stage events from the end of July, when ultimately we opened the permitting process again.
Yeah. So from the end of July, how many events have you been able to permit and see happen this year?
Yeah, so since the end of July and up until the beginning of lockdown 2, we've had 92 events that have happened.
92, wow. And prior to that, you so obviously there were events that did actually go ahead leading up to lockdown 1, I suppose. There were a few early season events. Did you?
We had 67 up until March, until the first lockdown went in.
Yeah. So obviously significantly less than we would have had last year, but it is a testament to teamwork, I suppose, that you were able to get almost 100 events happening since July. That's absolutely fantastic. And obviously some of those events were quite high profile ones as well. So is the experience any different from an athlete's point of view if they're doing a smaller, low-key grassroots events, such as the Go Try events that British Triathlon puts on, to a larger marquee event such as the Blenheim Triathlon or other larger events that are out there?
The key principles of the guidance are exactly the same, whether that's a 20-person Go Try event or a 4,000-person Blenheim or Hever event. And that ultimately revolves around the practical implementation of social distancing and increased hygiene. And the increased hygiene is not just your hand sanitizer and washing. It's about removing touch points so that there are minimal sort of places where you would get a number of people that congregating or handling items or whatever it might be. So it's just ultimately minimizing risk in as many points as possible.
Yeah, and so to the best of your knowledge, there's not been a single, or has there been I should phrase the question a different way. Has there been an incident of someone being a spreader at an event that you're aware of? I haven't seen anything, but
no. So we have a fairly thorough post-race report system which comes in, which is usually in relation to the race starts, number of people that have taken part. We haven't had any reports of athletes or a spreader. We had one person who had contracted it prior to the event, but that was not in relation to the event itself. So,
okay. And just out of interest, did that person participate, and therefore? No, they didn't. Okay. So is it in terms of, and this is something that we discussed previously, is this whole idea of having a medical test or doctor's certificate prior to an event almost seems a waste of time, doesn't it now? And obviously with more rapid testing being available, you can still, from the point that you've had that test before you actually get to the race start, you could still have contracted COVID in that window. So it almost seems a little bit pointless. It's all about the testing that you do or the measures you put in place on race day, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of measures in place on race day, which ultimately limit that contact ability. The key aspect that we had, obviously, we don't have the rapid testing. We haven't had the rapid testing during the summer, and so it was all about a pre-event health declaration and putting that in place as close to the event as possible. And we are we're very open, and a lot of this relies on self-management from individuals, both from participants and from staff that are taking part. So if you are feeling any symptoms or if you've been in contact with anybody, then you have to follow the usual government protocols of isolation.
Yeah.
And at the day, at a large number of events, we also had the thermometer testing, which happened as well.
Yeah. And so I suppose comparing triathlon with other endurance sport or mass participation events, it does seem that Tri has been able to sort of, I'm not going to say sneak in, but it's definitely been able to undertake what one might call mass events in a controlled environment, whereas running events by their nature just do seem to be a bit more difficult to put on. There obviously have been a number of running events that have been going ahead, but obviously Parkrun hasn't come back yet, and a few other, clearly a number of major running events have been cancelled or they've changed their format. Do you think that triathlon has an advantage, given that the format of swim, bike, run and drafting means that you have social distancing sort of inbuilt or hardwired into the event format itself?
Yeah, so I mean, from a drafting point of view, on a draft illegal race, obviously the guidance is that you have 10 meters between you and the bike in front anyway. Essentially, what we have done is put in a time trial format so that everybody starts with a requisite amount of time between first person and then second person, and that naturally maintains an element of social distancing. And we're very clear in the guidelines that you have to maintain 2 meters in the swim, 10 meters on the bike as usual, and 2 meters on the run. You're able to pass, and there are, that's what is termed as fleeting contact. So it's not that if you start behind somebody, you have to stay behind them all the way, because that's not necessarily practical. But the format has actually worked really, really well. Obviously, for the more experienced racer who looks for that sort of mano a mano competition element, it's
womano, of course.
Womano, exactly. Yeah. It's not quite the same, but with regards to enabling the sports to happen, it's been incredibly successful, and some great learnings with regards to particularly the sort of the novice and the beginner market, who that sort of gentle conveyor belt of people going off is actually a much more pleasant experience than 80 to 100 people starting in a washing machine, basically, in the swim.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question. So do you find that, what's the feedback been? Have people been, oh, I missed the washing machine, or have they said, do you know what, I really don't?
Well, I've got to say, we've not had anybody say I've missed the washing machine, it's fair to say. But certainly we've had some really positive positive feedback from a number of events who've got traditionally a large number of first timers, like Blenheim Triathlon. We were down there, we were at the event because we worked so closely with them during the weeks and months up to actually putting the event on. And yeah, there was a huge amount of positivity from the participants with regards to that experience, as well as actually another key element that we put in place is effectively defined arrival and racking times, which are very prescribed, but actually from an event experience perspective, the events feel a lot less rushed and hectic by this sort of gentle arrival. In you go, you follow a very, very prescribed flow, but actually people are a lot calmer because of it as well.
Yeah.
Definitely helped the overall sort of atmosphere.
So do you think there'll be a bit of a rub off? So as and when this is all behind us, and it's a horrible memory, but one that's we've clearly learned a lot from. Do you feel that there will, some of those aspects of the race experience will be a bit more hardwired into the events, whereas rather than just redoing what have been done in previous years?
For sure. I mean, we'd certainly like to see that, and the sort of ongoing conversations with events organisers with regards to key learnings that we've had from this that are positive to take forward. Ultimately, as a collective, we're still in that delivering in under COVID requirements at the moment, and we will do so until such time as social distancing is removed. And who actually knows when that might be.
Well, that leads very nicely on to the next question, actually, because 2021 it's a big question, isn't it? Because we have a vaccine. So the first person out of trials was vaccine this week. Fantastic. And up, I think Boris, UK Prime Minister, said that up until after Easter, things might return a bit to normal. Now, clearly, we've had statements from politicians before that we might need to kind of maybe treat with a pinch of salt. But what are your expectations for next year? Are you thinking it'll be pretty much like 2020, or do you expect it to be, excuse the really awful pun, a sort of transitionary year where you have a mixture of COVID secure events and then a bit more freedom once the vaccine starts to roll itself through?
I think that the key thing here is that ultimately we're going on the basis that we play the cards that are in front of us at the time, because you try and plan, you try and predict, and that's when things go to whatever you want to call it. And that's, again, it's been one of our founding principles of don't overcomplicate something. Let's make sure we can practically do something in the best possible way with what we know can be done. The more you try and predict and change, the more you're going to trip yourself over. And so we're very much working on the basis of delivering in time trial format. In terms of our sort of outlook, shall we say, again, we're doing a huge amount of work with our event organizer community, have been surveying them over the last month with regards to their plans for 2021. And that's not just about understanding what events are definitely going to go on, but it's also about understanding what events potentially aren't going to go on and the reasons for that, so that actually we can become an enabler to unlocking those barriers. Because a lot of yes, there are some practical considerations from a commercial point of view about staging events in a time trial format, but quite often considerations are venue related or local authority related. And from we've doing a huge amount of work, like I said, with Sport England, like I said earlier, and key learning through them is that the biggest blocker is often at the local authority level, just simply through a lack of understanding and a lack of appreciation about the safety aspects of delivery. So we've remodeled our permitting process, and we'll be working even more closely with regards to helping to unlock those barriers as we go forward, basically.
Yeah. So I suppose in terms of the future and the outlook for the sport, what are your thoughts for its long-term prospects? So you mentioned there race organisers who may not be putting events on next year. As you say, that might be a permitting issue, it might be a commercial consideration, cash flow, and other factors that they may be facing. What are your thoughts for the medium to longer term prospects for triathlon specifically, given obviously your governing body's role and ability, I suppose, to shape the future as much as be a custodian of it?
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not in any way doom and gloom about 2021. I think, as with this year, we've shown how things can happen, and that's only going to be an even more positive sort of outlook for 2021. The key thing is that sort of public perception and understanding about safety. And we have a very clear 4-point plan in terms of what we're doing from an event servicing perspective to help enable as many events to get up and running as possible. And part of that is a piece of work with the participant base as a whole with regards to sort of the safety of events and why they should feel confident with regards to attending an event going forward.
Yeah.
In terms of the medium to long term future, numbers are strong, and actually this adversity has brought the events community even closer together, to an extent where you've got some of the biggest names from a staging point of view who are actively working together to help each other to find solutions. Usually they wouldn't talk to each other at all, but through the work that we've done with this working group, there's a massive amount of camaraderie that's been built up, and it can only be positive with regards to putting on great experiences going forwards, which is ultimately what we are here to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fingers crossed for the future. I think that, as you say, there are reasons to be cheerful. I just want to say thanks ever so much for everything you guys have been doing at British Triathlon. It's been a real pleasure to see, and wishing you all the best, and here's to a positive 2021.
Thanks very much, Gary, and to you and to all your listeners and viewers. It's really kind. Thanks so much for having me, and look forward to catching up again soon.
Yeah, thanks again. Cheers. Take care, Jonny.
Bye.
Bye-bye.